Matthias and Jonathan?
Thomas.
Thomas, damn it.
Jonathan.
I don't know. I don't know where my brain went with that one. Who is Jonathan?
Not being able to tell that Thomas,
At least I'm not the only one that does it.
this poor man, he died for the
What,
Republic for this.
what if we splice just those sections and that's our intro? It's just us trying to remember Thomas's name.
Let's call him Jonathan again.
Hello, and welcome to Young Adult Reviews, where two youngish adults review books meant for much younger adults.
For children.
I'm Honor.
And I'm Chloe, and this week we are discussing Legend by Marie Lu. This was a request from our listener, Stanky Dog. Stanky Dog, thank you so much for sending it in. And if you haven't read this series yet, here's the spoiler warning.
We do not have any content warnings for this week, I believe, so let's move right along to the summary.
Almost 150 years into the future, global warming has disappeared most of Earth's land masses, and America has split into two dystopias, the Republic and the colonies.
Day is the most wanted criminal who lives in the underbelly of the Republic. June is a prodigy who is the only person in history to score a 1500 on the trials that test aptitude for military. They are both legends in their own right.
A plague is ripping through the poor districts of LA, and Dave finds his family infected. He needs to steal some medicine for them to help out, even though his family believes him to be dead.
Meanwhile, June is attending LA's top military university, graduating years ahead of schedule at 15. Her older brother, Matthias, is a military captain who loves her, though she gets in trouble a lot at school.
Dave steals plague medicine and gets into a scuffle. In the process, he throws a knife at a soldier. It hits him in the shoulder, he swears.
Meanwhile, June gets a call that her brother has been killed by the notorious criminal Day. She vows to hunt him down and make him pay for what he's done.
June goes undercover in the slum district to try and root him out, and she encounters him. There's an undeniable tension between them, and they kiss.
June reports him to her commanders nonetheless, and Day surrenders after Thomas, her brother's friend, shoots his mother point blank.
Day is arrested, and the people of the Republic start to riot. The people love Day. He becomes a figurehead for a movement of political change.
June is unsettled, though. Things aren't adding up. Some illegal digging reveals that Day scored a perfect 1500 on the trials too, but he was experimented on and killed for it.
She also finds out that Matthias probably wasn't killed by Day either. His death was a cover-up after he did some digging on the truth of the Republic. Thomas did it, and that's not all. Matthias and Thomas were roommates.
6 feet apart, because they're not. Oh, wait, they were.
They were.
June helps Day escape, but his brother John dies in the process. They decide to go to Vegas to seek out Tess, a girl that Day has spent time on the streets with.
Tess has joined the Patriots, a rebel group aimed at reuniting the USA again. Razor, their leader, recruits June and Day for being beloved by the people.
Their mission? Assassinate the new elector of the Republic, Andon, so that the Patriots can take control to lead the reunion of the country.
June and Day get to work. June undercover in Andon's inner circle, and Day shows that he's not, in fact, dead by rabble-rousing.
June realizes that the Patriots want Andon dead because they have been hired by Congress to kill him off. His ideas are radical, but they're good. She signals to Day, and with a lot of trust, he helps her stop the assassination.
On the run from the Republic and the Patriots, June and Day flee across the border to the colonies. Though Day is mad at her for being a little bit classist, June is sick, so he gets her to a hospital.
The colonies are not better than the Republic, contrary to what Day thought. It's the complete corporatization of the government and the commodification of humans.
Day realizes that Andon is their only hope after he releases his plague victim brother Eden. A pilot named Kaide takes June and him back via plane to the Republic.
The Patriots exposed, Day publicly declares their support of Andon, and June becomes Princeps-elect of the Congress. All is not well. Day has a brain bleed, and he is dying.
8 months later, June and Day have not spoken out of fear of hurting the other. Day's condition has worsened. War is coming.
The colonies attack the Republic, and aid from Antarctica seems like it will never come without a plague cure.
Long story short, June is patient zero. They get the cure from her. Antarctica comes to save the day after the Republic does a false surrender in LA.
The colonies get got, but so does Day. He gets shot twice and sees his mom, so you know that's not good. He goes into a coma for months.
During this coma, they operate on his brain bleed, even though he's not ready for it yet. When he wakes up almost unchanged, June is thrilled, except for he doesn't remember her.
Oops. Deciding that she will hurt Day as long as she's in his life, June vows to love him always and leaves him be.
10 years later, Day stops her on the street. The memories have come flooding back at the sight of her. They reintroduce themselves in perhaps the most heart-wrenching epilogue known to man, and we can guess that they get their happy ending. The end.
See, I beg to differ that that's the most heart-wrenching epilogue that Marie Lu has ever written, because I remember Midnight Star, and that was brutal.
Okay, no, that one was fucking brutal. Marie
Yeah.
Lu gets you with the epilogues. Like, she does not fuck around.
She really does. So this one, yes, this one was good, but I would not say it was the most heart-wrenching, because I have in fact read Midnight Star.
Okay, but it does hit. Like, this epilogue had me tearing up, and I never cry at books. Midnight Star had me sobbing, but Champion had me like before she even encountered Day, when she was just like going through her life, because she has that sequence where she's like, this is how I've spent the past my birthdays.
Oh my gosh, that got me so bad. But I think the hardest part of it, which was also the best part of it, was that Day had talked about how he'd wished that he had met her on the street and in a normal way rather than in the way that they had met originally. And so they kind of got to do that when they encountered each other the second time, because it ends with him saying, "Hi, I'm Daniel," and them shaking hands, and she's like, "Hi, I'm June," and I was like, and I'm crying. Not really, but like, you know.
I was tearing up. I had to take a
gotta get a little breather in there.
And while we're still on the subject of the epilogue, the other line that got me was on her birthday, she's visiting Matthias's grave, and she's like, "I'm 27. I'm never going to be your little sister again, because you are always going to be 27. And I was like, even right now, I'm like tearing up, because it's so fucking heartbreaking.
That one made me tear up, because it was so true. There's so many times that people leave too early and you age farther than they ever did, and it's heartbreaking to know that they never got that far in.
To put a spin on Taylor Swift's All Too Well being topical, I get older, but you'll always stay the same age. Anyway, we're getting a little ahead of ourselves. Honor, what did you think of this book?
I was thinking that was not an appropriate reference. I liked Legend. No, I think this book's really good. I think it's a wonderful teen YA book. Because, you know, the YA genre very much ranges teen and then actually young adult. And then now we have the new adult mixed in. I feel like this very nicely fits into teen. I feel like there were a lot of aspects in here that I kind of wanted to see in Divergent.
I was thinking the same thing. I think Legend did what Divergent was trying to do, and they did it better.
I agree there, because there were a lot of moments, and sometimes the prose and the fighting was a lot better than what we heard in through Divergent.
Mm-hmm.
So I very much was satisfied with getting what I wanted from Divergent out of this.
Mm-hmm.
I thought it was well done. I did think there were moments that it very much felt like a first-time writer, because there were some things that kind of popped in out of nowhere that I think could have been given more foresight to. For example, with Matthias and Thomas, there were really no signs in the first book that there was anything between them, that there was anything related to that. In fact, Thomas gave very much straight predator vibes, which was not really his intention according to the second and third book, but fit for the narrative at the time. And then in the second book, out of nowhere, he's like, "Yeah, it's because I loved him, so I killed him." And it's like, wait, hold up. Like, I'm good about figuring things out. There was nothing to figure out for that one. It just came out of nowhere.
No, like, I totally agree with what you're saying. Like, this is Marie Lu's debut novel, came out in 2011. In fact, I didn't even realize this was happening while we were reading this. The 10th anniversary of Legend happened.
It was so cute. You like sent me this whole picture that she'd written out on her Instagram.
From Ipperwing. Ipperwing, the artist, literally built the fan art community for Legend. Death grip that they had on Tumblr during that time. At least the side of Tumblr that I was on. I love Ipperwing. What can I say?
Shout out to Ipperwing.
Yes, go follow them. Their art is phenomenal. I don't know if I would agree with you that there was nothing foreshadowing Matthias and Thomas, though, because in the first book, they do allude to it. And they allude to Matthias and Thomas spending a lot of time together. Matthias and Thomas being best friends, hanging out outside of work. Shit like that. And there was also this line that Matthias had in an exchange with June when she was younger, and she's like, "When are you gonna get a girlfriend?" And he's like, "I don't know. I'm kind of picky."
See, yeah, that was the only line that I could see as pointing towards it. Because, best friends do spend a lot of time with each other outside of work and like stuff like that. I get that this was not that situation, but that's not always something that alludes to this situation. The girlfriend comment definitely was. I will absolutely give you that one though.
Mm-hmm. Well, also, really, their relationship didn't even come to fruition until the moment before the point where Thomas tried to kill Matthias. Well, tried
And
to.
that
He
was only
succeeded.
because Thomas was using it against him.
No, literally. Thomas core is when, you know that image of the American flag, but it has the pride stripes on it? That's Thomas'
Yeah.
aesthetic to a T. Oh my god.
Except that it's much more American flag than Pride. I'm sorry.
Okay, can I also just say they kept their relationship, or rather, Matthias kept his attraction to Thomas kind of a secret, not because of homophobia, but because it was a captain subordinate relationship, which was
Yep.
frowned upon, illegal, what have you. Can I just say there's no homophobia, even in this dystopian society?
Yep.
End of comment.
See, and that was the interesting thing to me because when we first started discussing Marie Lu books, you talked about how her books didn't really have a lot of like diversity or LGBTQ plus in her first couple of novels, and that she's like gotten better as she's progressed. And so I thought that was interesting because there's still for like 2011, there's a good bit in here. And it's not in a derogatory or negative way.
I have some commentary on that. So there is this trope in media called bury your gays.
Mm.
And sometimes people they want to have this tragic emotional death, but they also want to put the representation in there, so they
Mm.
bury their gays. I know it was kind of like a posthumously recognized bury your gays, but it still is nonetheless.
See, I was referring to the way that people viewed the fact that they were gay. Like there was no
The
negativity.
world of the story.
Correct.
Yes. Yeah, no. Just in terms of tropes of our world, that is, I think, my biggest qualm with LGBT representation in the Legend trilogy. And of course, also we have Pascal later. And Day talks about getting flirted with guys just like nonstop. He's like, oh my God, so many guys wanted me. You guys wouldn't even believe it.
Day's like, I take them all.
Day doesn't discriminate. Day is a bi icon.
And yet June is at the top of his list. He's like, that's the one for me. He's like, June, everyone else.
Okay, can you blame him? June's amazing.
She really is, though. But he did forget everything about her. So, wow.
Well, he felt like something was missing and that he had been searching for something for the past 10 years.
Can we talk about how annoying that was, though? Like,
Okay.
he remembers everything basically but her.
Well, he didn't remember anything from like the 2 years that had happened.
He did, though. He remembered some of it because he remembered like his mom's death and some of the like tragedy, I guess, the tragic events, but she was there for those. So, and then
No, his parents' death definitely had plot armor because or not his parents' death, but rather his mother and John's death. He was like, yeah, I know that they're dead. I feel like that was just so like he could have that interaction with June without them being like, oh, by the way, your mom and brother are dead, because he'd have to grieve them all over again, which would fucking suck. So that's a little plot armory.
That's what I'm saying. Like, it was set up as a way to just make this cute moment, and it succeeded. It made a very cute moment. Also heartbreaking. But it was set up purposely for that reason. It was very obvious that it wasn't like in a realistic way.
No, totally. I am not the biggest fan of the amnesia trope, but hi, I'm Daniel gets a pass.
Hi, I'm Daniel. And she's just like, this boy. I want to talk about Tess because you have a bone to pick with her.
I have a few bones to pick with Tess.
I didn't think she was quite that bad up until the second book. There's a little bit nitpicky in the second book that I have, and then she was fine after that. So you go first.
I think that I was mad at Tess in the first book because I still had recollections of the second book from my previous read in middle school and early high school. I just got the sense that she was going to do something fucking stupid, and I got preemptively mad at her for it, and I was like, I fucking hate Tess.
We were like reading through it, and you're like, the only things you were texting me about was how much you hated Tess and how much you hated Thomas. And I was like, okay, the Thomas I can kind of get, but Tess ain't doing nothing here. Like,
Yeah,
she's
because
like
Thomas.
basically a puppy following him around.
No, but the thing is, in the second book, Tess turned into such a pick me. I hated it. I hated it. And she was like 13, 14, I
Mhm.
think, throughout the course of the series. Day and June were both 15, Day on the later end of 15. And it was just like, I don't know. I was not vibing with her because there's this whole scene where June is working undercover and playing a fucking character to get into Andon's inner circle in Prodigy. And Tess is talking to Day, and she's like, she's kissing the Elector, which is a whole nother problem that we can talk about. She's kissing the Elector. You think she gives a fuck about you? I'm the only person that's always been there for you, Day. She's gonna betray you. And she gets so fucking jealous.
Mhm.
And she's like, June doesn't understand you like I do. You've known her for what, like a month, and you already say that you love her, kind of things. And it's like, Tess, lay the fuck off.
Mhm. See,
Anyway,
I'm gonna play devil's advocate for a moment.
okay.
I think it was hard for her in a very different way because she did not see anything between Day and June. All she saw was the fact that June literally tore everything that Tess knew, which was Day and their street life, away from Tess, broke apart Day's family, and suddenly they come back to her after she's joined the Patriots. And Day's like all in love with June, and she doesn't understand it because she didn't see any of the growth that happened between them. So all she sees are these negative facts. That, on top of the fact, and here's my thing, I think she liked Day because she was coming into her womanhood. And I know that sounds really messed up, but hormones affect a lot of your mental thinking. They do.
No,
And she
absolutely.
admitted later that she realized that she liked Day more as, I think, more like a brotherly relationship.
Mm-hmm.
And she realized that. And I think all of those feelings were just very confused in her head because of how much everything had changed. Just the fact that she had been um separated from him for so long, that she was having all these hormones from growing up.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think she just didn't understand in her own way how to get him to understand what she was feeling and why she was feeling it, because she didn't quite understand it. And also
Mm-hmm.
the fact that everything she had seen, and he's just okay with it all.
I definitely see where you're coming from. I think that's definitely a valid take, especially because in Champion, June and Tess are tight.
Mm-hmm.
Like they talk about, like Tess will fill in June on things that are happening with Day. Tess is the one who orchestrates their reunion. I definitely see where you're coming from on that.
Now, I don't think she did it in the right way at all, because if you're going to be like, hey, I don't think this girl is good for you, and I want you to know that I have feelings for you, going and yelling at him and tearing down the girl that he likes is not going to get you there. She was
Mm-hmm.
absolutely being pick me for that.
Mm-hmm.
But I do think she had her own reasons in her own way, and it was not as bad as it seemed, other than how she said it. We're girls support other girls here, and Tess is not being very supportive. However, at the end, when she set up the whole dinner so they would meet again 10 years later, that was very girls support other girls. So
That was so supportive of her. Good for you,
good
Tess.
for Tess.
That's character growth. I would like to say, in relation to Tess trying to drive apart June and Day, stuff like that,
Mhm.
I like how Day never really let that shit get to him. He saw June kissing Andon and he was like, oh, that's fine. She's playing a character. He was like bothered by it, yes, but he's like not going to hold it against her. I appreciate the fights that they got into over the course of this YA dystopia novel, much unlike any of the other books in this genre at this time. They fought over things that kind of mattered and shit that was really personal because of course June comes from an entirely different world from Day. She comes from a very wealthy family. She comes from a place where her status was lauded. Meanwhile, Day, who is her equal because he also got a 1500 on the trial, but he was experimented on and left for dead because he was poor. So class is automatically this kind of tense issue between them that they don't really talk about at first, but Prodigy, they kind of get into it because after Day takes this amazing leap of faith and trusts June and doesn't follow through with the Elector's assassination plot, June tells him why, and he's like, that's it. you fucking believe him? And then June was like, okay, like, I don't know why you're turning this into like a class thing. He's like, everything's a class thing. What are you talking about? And she's like, money doesn't matter that much. And he's like, fuck you. You did not just say that to me. And I think that that is an important thing to fight about with your significant other, especially if they talk like that and you come from two radically different worldviews. And of course, like, they come back around and June is like, I'm sorry, like, I didn't mean it like that. I don't know. I just appreciate that they're not fighting over petty shit, you know?
Mm-hmm. I agree. I think it's good that they were fighting over what they were fighting about. However, I think they were absolutely terrible at talking anything out because they fought, but they never got to any agreements on anything or any understandings on anything either. And so it was very frustrating because they didn't really understand how to communicate with each other, and they didn't understand how to convey even their own feelings with each other. And so for that reason, I hate to say it, but you know how they have those things where like, would this couple survive after the book ending? I don't
Yeah.
think they would.
No, I love them.
I love them too, but I think they very much rely heavily on their own feelings for each other. And I'm talking about young, the two young them,
Yeah.
not 10 years later.
Mhm.
So in just the trilogy, because they have Rebel, which is 10 years later. So I read that also. We'll get to that later. In just the trilogy, I don't think they would have survived if he hadn't lost his memory, if they had kept going, because they had no idea how to communicate. They only relied on their actual infatuation with each other.
Mhm.
And I think that would have been their downfall, especially because as much as I love Day, he's a very, very stubborn boy. Um, and he kind of was holding the things that she couldn't control against her in a sort of subconscious way, like the class system. And so even though she would apologize and try to explain where she was coming from, he kind of accepted it, but he didn't accept it internally. You know what I'm saying? Like, he accepted the apology, not the fact that she said that in a misunderstanding. Also, the fact that she didn't know how to explain herself was very problematic. How do you get a 1500 and you can't explain what you're thinking in your own head?
I have more theories, but I need to comment on what you said first. Here's the thing. Day is very stubborn, but he's also so in love with June. Legend is
Yes.
absolutely guy falls first. He
Mhm.
falls head over fucking heels in love with her, and he would do anything for her. And even after some thinking, he's like, okay, I shouldn't have gotten mad, but I was mad. And you said that June apologizes, but she doesn't. June doesn't know how to apologize. She just kind of like
She
comes
really
with an
doesn't.
olive branch. Literally
It's
after
it's
that,
her version of apologizing.
no, literally, there's this paperclip ring that Day makes June, and she kind of makes like a comment about it that he misconstrues, and he's like, "Oh, like, okay, sorry that it's not Jules." And she's like, "No, like, I love it." And she starts like listing off the properties of the paperclip, and he's like, "Okay, you don't have to lie." And she's like, "I'm not lying." And then after the argument about class, she comes in and she's like, "You're punching wrong." Do you want me to show you how to punch right? And he's like, I know she's apologizing, but oh my God, is she bad at it? And then
No,
he like
literally,
comes around.
she cannot explain herself for the life of her. like, like if someone was holding Day at gunpoint and was telling her that she had to explain why she liked the paperclip in a reasonable way, Day would be dead.
No, I think June Empress is autistic. I think she's autistic representation. Just like as a headcanon of mine, like you know how I said that about four?
Mhm.
I think June is autistic as well.
No, okay, because June and Four have so many similarities.
Same energy, right? I think they'd get
Same
along.
energy. And she's like, I explained myself. And then you see Dave's point of view, and he's like, you absolutely did not. Just like Tobias. And
No, June was like, I
Tobias is
did
like,
so
I
good.
explained it. And Dave's like, what did she just say? Like,
Because I think that moment where Day was like, oh, fuck, was when they go to the colonies and it's nothing like he thought it would be.
Mhm.
Because something that I really love that Marie Lu does in Legend is that she chose two divisions of something like unsettlingly real of what this country specifically, meaning America, could turn into.
Mhm.
Um, because on one hand, we have full totalitarian control, militarization of everything, on the West Coast, and then on the East Coast, or what's left of it after global warming, we have full corporatization and it's like late stage capitalism, you know? And I think that's two very realistic things of what people might try to gravitate towards in America. Because, of course, the colonies, it's like, oh, there's like these glittering cities. It's so much better than the Republic. But there are four corporations that control everything. And they say that you have the freedom of choice, but it's like the choice between four corporations and you have to pay to report crimes. They also don't give a fuck about the poor. And something that made me laugh was when they were running out of the hospital to the airship on the roof with Kaide, the soldiers are like, stop them, they're valuable property. And I was like, and that's it right there, ain't it?
Mm-hmm.
Isn't that just the thing? I really appreciate how she showed two ends of a spectrum instead of just one. Like, they both suck.
Yeah, and then with Rebel, she showed a whole third one, and that was really interesting. I'm not going to spoil that for you because I know you're in the middle of reading it.
Well, I'm getting the gist of, because Rebel takes place in Antarctica, and as we briefly touched upon in our Warcross episode, the Neuralink technology that gets more developed during Warcross is now utilized in Antarctica, and their way of life is like a game, kind of like literally what Hideo wanted to do. So if what Hideo wanted had come to fruition, it would be Antarctica.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm assuming it has something to do with that.
It does, absolutely.
Yeah.
And they're all like, oh, this is the perfect system. Like, everyone has an equal opportunity here. And then the whole group comes in and they're like, actually, low key, though, I think the colonies was more terrifying than the Republic.
Oh my God, right? Literally fucking terrifying. No, I would, not to like pick my poison, but I would rather live in the Republic than the colonies.
Same.
Like, does the Republic wage biochemical warfare on its poor people? Yes. I would rather live in that than late stage capitalism, as if we're not doing both right now in our current country. Anyway.
So you've read this book before?
Yes.
Had you finished the trilogy originally?
I had finished the trilogy originally, yes.
How, with the read through, how did like the nostalgia hold up? How did the book itself hold up, the plot, all of that? What are your thoughts comparing?
I was really surprised at how kind of steamy it got, especially at the beginning of Champion. Day is just straight up making out with a random bitch in a club, and he's like kissing her neck and all that shit. And I was like, oh my God. Because I did remember that June and Day had sex, as you do. But I was surprised at that because I literally must have been 12 or 13 when I read through all of these.
It was steamy, that's for sure.
No, right? And I guess I think it definitely did hold up because I still love Day. Like, if Day was in love with me, damn.
Sorry,
Day
Robert.
is, no, but he's such a good character. I had so much fun with both of their point of views. Both of them were like fresh and like exciting because it bounces back and forth between June and Day and their point of views. And all of Day's point of views are in the color assigned to the book. So you have yellow, blue, and red, and then purple for Rebel. And I think that has to do with his like whole thing because Day is his street name. His real name is Daniel. His motto is like always try to walk in the light. And I think that's why his words are in color. It has to do with his motto because why not? He's just a sunshiny boy.
Okay, but when June and Thomas were talking on Thomas's like quote unquote final day.
Oh my God.
And Thomas was like, I did the right thing. I've done everything right. I don't understand why I'm always the one that's, in the wrong here. And Day's the one that gets off scot-free when he's the one that breaks the rules all the time. And I don't understand how this is fair. And June's like, it's because he chose to walk in the light. And I was like, oh, she said it.
No, literally. That was like kind of a girl boss moment for her.
Yes. She has a couple of those. She's very good at those.
Oh my God. I'm sorry. But the way that Thomas was telling that final story, it was having me cringe. I was like, imagine calling your dead crush's little sister to you on death row just to tell her this like it's a fucking romance novel.
Right?
Which also speaks to how deluded he is, I think, as well. Because I was definitely getting heavy secondhand embarrassment for him. It was not a good look for Thomas. I almost called him a wrong name again.
I know, I keep doing that too. I know June wanted to punch him so bad in that moment. I just know it. Like, she held herself back.
She said, Lord, hold me back. I can't.
I was with her. If she'd have punched him straight in the face, I'd have been proud. I'd been like, you go, girl.
Mm-hmm. Those guards would have turned a blind eye. It would have been okay.
Well,
While
seeing that
we're
they weren't the
on,
proper guards, yeah, they would have turned a blind eye.
while we're on the subject of Thomas and having secondhand embarrassment, let's talk about age gaps in this novel because it's a little weird. So let me just lay out the ages real quick. June and Day, pretty much the same age. Totally fine. Like June and Day are both 15, and then Day is 16, then they're 17, and it's fine, right? Andon, who is the new elector of the Republic, who June has like a brief fling with, 20 years old. Thomas, I want to say he's 23 because I believe, no, wait, Matthias was 27, and I think Thomas was 3 years younger than him. So Thomas was 24, and both of those men kissed June. What the fuck? I don't know what she was thinking on that one. That one was weird.
What got me more right is Andon. He basically was like, oh, I've been interested in you ever since you came to the university, because he was a senior at the time and she was 12 years old, and he's like, that's hot. No sir. No sir.
And people are like, oh my god, I love Andon. And it's like, okay, but like honestly, if I knew him in real life, he'd be a fucking creep. Right. I'd want to stay as far away from him as possible, which is why I'm glad. I think this is a good segue. Also, while we were reading this series, it was announced that Legend is finally going to be adapted into a TV show.
I'm so excited.
Oh my god, right? And I was like, oh fuck, like I don't know how they're gonna do, like reading through, because I did not remember June being 15. I thought she was like at least 16. But for a majority of the series, she's only 15 years old. But I was reading through the log line on the trade article I was reading. I can't remember which site it was with. And they said that both June and Day are now going to be 18. And I said, thank you. That's so much better. I'm glad that they're doing that. I'm very excited for that. And that was like the one thing I was scared about. Okay, no, that's not the one thing I was scared about. I'm also scared about how they're going to cast this, because I don't want them to whitewash any of the characters. Because I think Andon and Day both have Asian lineage. June, I believe, is canonically native. So I just want them to really do that correctly and not make any of that white. I think Marie Lu is executive producing, which I do believe means that she has some pull in who they cast. So I hope that, I just can't wait to see the cast list. I'm so excited. I know it's a long time off. I know it's still in like the developmental stages, but oh, can I just say, okay, there are two weird things that I really like about this series. And it like has no pull whatsoever in like actual critical thinking content or like analytical content. One, I like that Day's execution was supposed to happen on my birthday.
Okay.
Two, Day is a Capricorn. I appreciate that.
Okay.
There's another thing. Three, during the scene in Prodigy where Day announces his support to Andon, to the Republic, he does so because the Patriots tweak the wires in the speaker systems throughout the Republic so that if one person speaks into something, it will be broadcast to the entire Republic. And I liked that because he's like, I hold up the speaker and speak into it like it's a megaphone. And I really appreciate the fundamental understanding of how microphones and speakers function, because they're the same fucking thing. It literally is just a tweak of the wire. And I appreciate that she knew that and utilized it effectively, because a speaker is a microphone and a microphone is a speaker, if you want it to be. That's my 3 cents, I guess.
See, the interesting thing to me is I know Day is incredibly smart. And I understand that he can probably figure things out, but it's so interesting to me that he and his brothers, like their whole family, weren't really given an opportunity to learn anything. They were from the poor sectors. They made it to age 10 learning, and that's like all he basically got.
Well, yeah,
and
because
he knows how to do all of these things, like rewire an entire system of speakers so that he can talk to June. And it's like, where did you learn this? Who taught you this?
Well, I think it's just kind of like the thing where you don't really need to be taught, because Eden, his younger brother, who is also the focus of Rebel, he's one of the point of views in there as well. He just tinkers, like, and that's all he does. So it kind of runs in the family, I think, where it's just like this natural desire for learning and for trial and error and to try and figure things out for yourself. And of course, like the education thing And then also there being these perfectly capable people within the poor sectors who literally were not allowed to continue on in their education because they weren't deemed acceptable enough, they weren't deemed fit enough, is all part of the argument about class and wealth and how that correlates to the power that someone can gain. Because another interesting thing about Thomas's character is that he uses the argument of, well, I was from the poor sector and I pulled myself up the right way. And I think that's another interesting way of how he kind of serves as this foil for Day. Or rather, Day kind of serves as a foil for him. Because Day is what Thomas could have been if he wasn't so, I was just following orders. Because Thomas is absolutely the type of person to be like, I was following orders and I don't regret it because it's what my country wanted of me. He is so patriotic, it makes him fucking dumb. But Day has the sense to fucking blend in with it when it's suitable for him and speak out against it when it's not.
See, that's also an interesting thing to me is the difference in comparison between Day and Thomas is because, Thomas also came from the poor sectors like Day, but because he wasn't like a perfect score, like a perfect specimen for them to work on, he got through. Meaning that if Day hadn't been so perfect, he could have gone the same route as Thomas. Not that he would have been Thomas with the fully patriotic, but he could have been in that same position. And I think it would have been interesting to see what could have happened given that. Also, it could have been very easily that they had just let him through with the perfect score. I think if it wasn't that he was so rebellious in his nature, they would have. And it would have been interesting to see the difference on how, in either of those routes, how he and June would have met and interacted.
Well, here's the thing. If he had been rebellious in nature, he wouldn't have gotten a perfect score on the interview section of the trials. Because there was that interview section and June's going through and she's like, wait, that's exactly how I would have answered it. And I would argue that June is more flippant to authority than Day is almost, especially while she's like secure in her status of wealth and power. Because at the opening of the novel, June is getting sent to the principal's office, or the dean's office rather, because it's college, for climbing a building off campus. And she's like, I'm just trying to serve my country. And they're like, it's still like a disciplinary infraction. And she doesn't really view it as this big thing because she has never really had
consequences for her.
She has never had to worry about consequences. Exactly. Like she always knows that her brother will be there to pick her up. She knows that she has that safety net beneath her of wealth. And when that's all kind of taken away from her, because her brother dies, she has to go on the run. She's like, fuck. And she really has to come to terms with how she views her own behaviors and the system that she has grown up in once that safety net is gone. It is hard to look at a system from the outside in when you have been treated so well by it.
But see, I would say because we kind of saw from June's perspective that it was the same things that she would have said for his answers, but we also saw from his perspective how he said it. And so I think it wasn't what he said, but how he said it that showed that nature to the interviewers. So yes, he said everything correctly, but I think because they took how he said it as a way of, we're not going to be able to control this, that's why they chose to not allow him through.
Well, I don't even think that it was because of how he said it. I just think it was because he was poor. I really do.
I do think that was a factor to it, but she also mentioned that part of the reason that they have the test the way they have it is so they can weed out that rebellious nature.
I think that a rebellious nature would have resulted in a lower score on the trials, because I think that because Day is a little bit older than June, remember, so he got the 1500 before her. So I think that if Day had gotten the first perfect 1500 in the Republic's history, and it was a boy from the slum sectors, that would have proved that their whole system is a fucking farce, so they couldn't stand for it. So that's why they sent him off to the quote-unquote labor camps to be executed and experimented on, instead of letting him have that victory. And it was because he was poor. I really don't think that rebellious nature had anything to do with it, because in fact, there's that excerpt where they have recorded it with the stenographer and June is going through it. And Day slips up or something and he apologizes. And the person administrating the test is like, oh, yeah, totally okay. Your apology is accepted. And Day is like almost reverent in his answers. So I really don't think rebellion had anything to do with it. I think it was all class.
I'm sorry, that just reminded. Can we talk about how June straight up went into a lie detector test and aced it while lying? Like, what?
She said, am I a liar? That remains to be determined. But then that was also a good point of inner conflict with herself because, of course, this is after everything fucking goes down and she's like, fuck the Republic. And then one of the questions they ask her is, are you still loyal to the Republic? And she's like, yes, because she has to say that. And then she's like, but I passed. She's like, but I passed. Am I still loyal to the Republic?
She straight up questioned herself. She did. She set it up so that she could lie and it would be marked as true. And then when she lied and it was marked as true, she was like, wait, what? When you girl boss too close to the sun, then you start questioning yourself.
You start gaslighting yourself. When you girl boss so hard, you gaslight yourself and gatekeep your boyfriend.
Girl, she would gaslight herself so much because so did Day too, because they knew that they both liked each other, but they would start to doubt that based on the other's reaction. And then they would convince themselves that that's not the actions that the others had were not that they liked the other person, but just because they wanted to be nice or something. And it was like, are you stupid? Like, cut it out.
No, literally. They gaslit each other so hard they went no contact for 10 years.
Literally. That was all June's fault.
No, June could have said something and it would have been fine, but she
didn't want to hurt him, which I think only kind of hurt herself. So
yeah, they hurt really themselves real bad on that one. Let's go back to something that we were talking about a little bit earlier. You mentioned that Divergent didn't give what needed to be gave, but Legend did. Would you care to elaborate on that? Because I agree with you, but I want to know what you think first.
In certain aspects, it did. I love Divergent. I think it's a great series. But there was a specific scene in Legend where Day was fighting against somebody, but the prose and how it was written was so similar to Divergent. But the way Marie Lu explained the details in the fighting and in the thought process and in what was happening was so much more concise and elaborative in a way that Divergent never really had when trying to explain scenes happening. And the fact that there wasn't like a death necessary in that moment to make it good. Mm-hmm. Because as much as I like Divergent, there was always a need of some sort of pain for Tris or whoever was talking in that moment for the point of view, or there had to be a death or something that very like emotionally damaging for the scene to be good.
We talked about this when we reviewed Divergent. She was killing characters left and right to fucking further Tris's character development.
Yes, and I think in Legend that wasn't necessary to further the development, and just the way the prose and the writing brought a lot more that I felt like I was missing and wanted from Divergent, which is funny because I almost didn't realize that was what I was missing and wanting until I read it this way in Legend, and I was like, oh, that's what it was.
I absolutely agree with you, because even not just from like a literary prose standpoint, I think from a thematic standpoint, Marie Lu accomplishes what Divergent was trying to do, but better. Because throughout the course of the story, June is grieving the loss of her brother, Day is grieving the loss of his mother and brother. And the best part of Divergent was, of course, it's theming around the idea of grief. But in Legend, they kind of approach this idea a little bit differently in how you can honor people in their death and how you can incorrectly do it too. Because one could argue that Thomas, in killing Matthias and doing everything he did after, was trying to honor Matthias in the best way that he knew how, by doing what made him fall in love with him in life. And that was not the right move, buddy boy. I hate to break it to you. And then we also see Day having his motto of walking in the light, and that's how he honors his family. So that's how you do it right, and that's how you can do it wrong. And June comes into contact with Day, and she sees how he does it right, and she's like, this is how I need to honor Matthias. This is what I need to do. And then also in the vein of sparking a revolution in the totalitarian government, also way better executed than Divergent, if I must say so myself, because Marie Lu also brings it to a global scale. It just makes more sense what happened.
And I think it's founded in a more realistic way of where our futures kind of could possibly be going. Versus Divergent was kind of out of the blue, and it was almost like we talked about with the world building. It was set up so much later in the ideas of it that it wasn't fully thought through. There were a lot of missing plot holes that kind of needed to be there, versus Legend is set up so well that you can see the realistic way of how it came about, how it has continued, and how it has gotten worse. And so it didn't have any of those missing aspects that make it real.
No, I agree. I think that Legend is definitely a better thought through trilogy. Correct me if I'm wrong, but Day, even though he gets his brain bleed diagnosis at the end of book 2, was having headaches all the way back in book 1. So that was something that was always kind of there as like a seed, because the doctor asks him during book 2, he's like, hey, have you had bad headaches? And Day is like, yeah, ever since I escaped from the Republic's labor camps. Wait a minute.
He's like, hold up, that's what that is?
He's like, this isn't related, is it? And the doctor's like, I hate to break this to you, bestie. And then also just in terms of becoming a figurehead to inspire the nation, because in Divergent, they like go to the Bureau of Genetics or whatever the fuck it's called. And everyone there is like, oh yeah, Triss. Triss is so cool. Triss and 4. And Triss is like uncomfortable that she's become like this figurehead. But Day is also uncomfortable. But everyone in the world is kind of looking in to see what he's doing, because when June goes to Antarctica, she gets to go on the internet without dystopian firewalls, and she sees what everyone else thinks of him for the first time. And I just think the idea of like becoming the leader of like the face of a movement is better executed in Legend than Divergent because of how Day handles it.
I agree. I also think that while they were bad at communicating, I think they had a better chance than Tobias and Triss did.
Oh my god, thank you. I don't even think Tobias and Triss had like the love to sustain them. I don't even think they liked each other that much. Dead ass. I do not think they liked each other that much, but Day liked June so much.
Also, I love in Rebel because there's so much that Day does not remember, even after meeting June again and getting some of those hints of memories back. But he remembers seeing her in so many different moments and remembers how beautiful that he thought she was and how amazing that he thought she was. And he's like, I can remember the first time that we kissed. And I remember how I felt in that moment and passing the bottle between us. Don't drink underage, kids. Passing the bottle between us, and how badly I wanted to kiss you and how beautiful you looked in that moment. But I can't remember where we were or what happened at that time. And it's like that is so wonderful.
Goals.
I'm sorry you can't remember anything else, but like you remembered the right parts, so
no, because like I did get that far. And
yes, he later says, I remember her in this beautifully stunning red dress and how absolutely drop dead gorgeous I thought she was. And I don't remember where we were or why she was so dressed up, but I remember that and I will not forget it. And I was like, stop it right now. I can't handle this. I just wanted to keep talking about the relationship. So,
okay.
I said that I don't think their teen selves would make it through. There's a good reason for that, because they meet again at the end of Champion in the 10 Years Later epilogue. And, they introduce themselves again. And then in Rebel, you find out it's been a couple weeks after, like you said, a month.
A month.
Yeah. They have not talked since then. They literally met, had dinner, and that was it. There was no communication afterwards. Nothing. And I'm like, if there's this bad 10 years later, they would not have survived as children. But I think it's really fun because you see kind of the advancement of their relationship. And Day, because he has had a chance to live almost a different life and experience different things, he doesn't hold the class system against her anymore. Because as much as like it was bad that she had the thoughts, like, oh, money's not that important and this or that or the other, I don't think he ever would have truly gotten over that
if he had not had a chance to like be on her side without her.
Exactly. And so it was kind of interesting because then we saw the reverse where they went to a restaurant and he was like all comfortable and natural in the environment. He was like, oh, like it took me a little bit to get used to like soda and stuff, but like this is normal now. And she's like, this is not you. This is so different.
And he's like,
And
bestie, you're so true. And then they go to an abandoned building.
He was like, facts?
He's like, let's bounce this place. I don't want to be here anymore.
But then you see the growth and the connection on how things have changed and how their understanding of the world has changed, because June has gotten a little more used to the idea of the differences in class and all of that, as well as he has. And so I think they have such a good understanding of the basis of what they need, and that they're going to continue on very well. And I'm very excited for them. They're not real, but I'm excited for them.
No, I'm excited for the developments in their relationship. Because I also got far enough in Rebel where June was telling Day, she was like, our world was falling apart every other week. And when it hasn't happened in a while, I start to get nervous. Which is like, okay, unresolved trauma. But
right?
I just love their love story because it's like, if you love it, let it go. And if it comes back, it's meant to be. And that is their love story to a T. And it's so beautiful because I can't really think of like a lot of pieces of media that execute it so well as Legend. I mean, I'm sure there are other examples of it that I'm just like either not aware of or I'm not thinking about right now. But Dune is the ship name, or Ipperwing.
I like Ipperwing.
Unparalleled.
That's kind of cool.
They're unparalleled. Biggest power couple. They're the best dystopian power couple, and I will die on that hill.
Shall we get on to ratings?
All right.
Chloe, how would you rate this book?
I think that I would rate this series a solid 4.25. Legend itself was like pretty good. I would say that this is actually a series that increases in quality the longer it goes on. I think I'd give the first book solid 4 stars, second book solid 4 stars. Champion, I'd give Champion like a 4.5. So I think that would average out to a solid 4.25. I think it gets a lot of points from me because, of course, the wonderful couple, love them, love the plot. It's very well thought through. I love how it speculates about where the world will be in 150 years or so. I love how it incorporates global warming because that is a very real and terrifying fear that I have personally. It's good to see a dystopian author kind of taking that seriously, I guess.
Do you realize in that world that I would be dead because I would be underwater?
Yes.
Living in Alabama.
I think I would barely make the cut. I think Arizona becomes like a coast town city. Arizona becomes a coast state. So I think I'd be just in the clear. But if you're in the dirty tea, forget about it.
At least your summers might be cooler.
I think that it loses points because of the amnesia thing. I hate to say it. But Champion, I think, would definitely lose points for me because of the whole amnesia thing. Not my favorite trope. But Hi, I'm Daniel gets a pass. It gets so many points for just being so fucking heart-wrenching. But amnesia thing, not my favorite trope. For the rest of the books, I would say there were some parts where it dragged. There were some points where it got just like super world building. And it's like, here's the history of this country and how we got here. And it goes into like solar flares and global warming and war and politics. And I'm not going to lie, my eyes glazed over and I skimmed. I was like, got it, late stage capitalism. Got it, the oceans rose kind of thing. And I just kind of like summed it up for myself in my mind because it was just like 2.5 pages of like, this is how we got here. And while I appreciate that, it was kind of a lot to read through. I wish it could have been a little shorter for parts like that because it does it a few times. What about you? What would you rate this book?
I'm going to rate it a 4.5 out of 5 stars. I have one reason why it's a little bit higher than yours because I was listening to your explanation while I was trying to think through my own reasonings. And one of my reasons I'm going to give it that extra 0.25 is because while they had that like other part of the quote unquote love triangle, it was like a polygon. It did not tear them apart. And I appreciate that because there's so many times that to further characters' relationships, they have to be torn apart or they have to break up and realize that they're better with the other or blah, 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 blah. And I realized they kind of did that with the ending and the amnesia.
But it was like a choice. It wasn't that they were torn apart. June kind of made that choice for themselves.
Exactly. And I appreciate that it did not happen in that way where they were forced apart. I really appreciated that while they had their own doubts, they trusted each other enough to push through those. So I think that's a very important thing to have is trust with with your significant other. So
Mhm.
I'm going to give it that extra point for that. I think it loses points because there were moments that I just felt like it dragged a little bit in, not in what was happening, because I felt like everything in the book happened in a good time frame, but just in how they were like describing things and going through what was going on. Because most of like Champion, like half of it is all just draggy at the beginning of what's just going on and setting everything up. And so I feel like that setup could have been a little bit shorter and could have given more description to what was actually happening towards the ending, because I felt like the ending was a little bit quick.
I agree because Champion was literally 100 pages going in. I think Day
Yeah.
doesn't even collapse from his first headache, and June and him are kind of like forced to talk to each other until 100 pages in, and then the war comes, you know?
And I think there could have been a lot more drama into the story if they had more time to develop into what was going on with June and what was going on with Day during all the medical stuff that was happening in the book. So
Mhm.
I would have liked to see that. I also, again, I'm with you on the amnesia. I think amnesia is good when it furthers the plot. In this moment, it did not. And I explain that because it was, again, used as a tool, not as an actuality, because he remembers certain things that are very traumatic just so it doesn't have to get re-explained to him. But he doesn't remember the things that would have been good and helpful for him. Yeah, I was like, okay. I get it, but also no.
No, literally, because like my one thing is that I guess it wouldn't have to be selective like that, but I'm pretty sure the only reason that he remembered that his mom and John weren't dead was so that he wouldn't be grieving when June tried to talk to him.
I think that could have been better because that could have been used as a way to give a further understanding of why she didn't want to continue with him, because she felt like she always hurt him. Because he would have been re-going through the trauma of it all, and then for her to try to come back in and say, "Hey, do you remember me?" And he's like, "You were the one that killed, my family." That would have been brutal. Can you imagine that ending? And then she's like, "I can't do that to him again."
Well, he wouldn't have remembered that, but I feel like if
No, but
if he was like,
but
I
it
want
would
to
have been
see.
a worry, I think, for them, because she would have been like, what if he finds out that that's what happened? Or what if he finds something out and blames me for it? Or what if I have to tell him that that's how things went down and he holds that against me? Like some of those thought process could have gone through.
No, right, because of course the thing that drives June to make her final decision is that after they have sex, Day like sneaks out and he goes back to his childhood home and June follows him and she sees him just sitting there in the dark at his kitchen table crying and she's like, I did this to him. So
Mhm.
to have that final impact where he's like, sorry, I just relearned that my mom and brother are dead. I don't want to be like rude or anything. I don't know who you are. She's like, never mind.
That would have been so much better,
hmm
because I think that would have really drove home just that idea of she's like, this is what happened. And then she would have had to like work through all the trauma of like, this is this is why I can't be with him. This is how it all happened. And then he comes back and he remembers her, and it's like, I don't hold that against you. And she's like, that would have been so cute. Anyway,
You're right. That could have
that
been
again,
better.
yeah, but that again also would have been the forced and broken apart more. So I don't know. It's a
I would
very
argue it's still a
give and take
decision, but
situation.
all right. Thank you very much for listening. We upload episodes bi-weekly. That is once every other week, not twice a week. That is too much reading. It's already too much for me every other week, and it'll be too much if we did it twice a week.
We literally fell behind the last couple sessions, and we were like, "Oh, we'll read Legend in a week so we can catch up to our regular schedule and have the proper like 2 weeks between sessions." And it was rough on both of us.
It
So
was.
it was, especially given that it's like what, finals week for you guys, isn't it?
It is finals week for me. Yes.
Yeah,
Everything's
so
due
that
this Friday.
that made it way worse. So we will hopefully not be doing that again, but we know that if it's necessary, we can in fact take a little bit longer and get back on track and still not throw off when we upload our episodes. Yay! Huge shout out to Robert for editing that episode so quickly.
Yay.
We do have other social media, including Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube. Our handles for that are at Young Adult Adult Reviews. We just closed on our 500 follower giveaway for Instagram. So if you're interested in being in the 1,000 follower giveaway, go follow us.
Yeah, and thank you very much to everyone who participated.
It was so much fun.
And congratulations to Euphoric Wonder for winning. I don't know if you're listening right now, but we appreciate you.
We do. So go ahead and give us a follow and a like on those pages. And
you can also drop suggestions on any of our social media accounts or right here on Spotify, if that's indeed where you're listening to it on. We do take listener suggestions, as this episode, again, was a listener suggestion from Stinky Dog. Thank you very much, Stinky Dog, for your listener engagement. We really appreciate it. Makes us very happy.
It makes our days.
It makes our days when we see there's a new comment.
Thank you guys for listening. We love you so very, very much. And that's all we got. So
that's a wrap.
Yeah, that was a